My name is Matt Sullivan from Light in the Attic Records and Distribution, and you're tuned into the Light in the Attic podcast. Thanks for joining us today. On this episode, we sat down with the folks at Mojo Magazine at their offices in London, England. Mojo is a monthly music magazine that's been around for about 25 years, focusing on the well-known and the lesser-known, especially those in the past in the reissue space and archival music space. It's been very influential for folks like us before there was things like Wikipedia and Discogs and many things of that nature at your fingertips. Mojo is definitely one of the few things out there that kind of open your mind up to an alternate universe of music and discovery, in the same sense that you might have an older sibling who turned you on to records that you may not have heard, or the clerk at your local record store. It was a pleasure to sit down with them, and a little surreal to be the one asking the questions. I don't think they were used to that, but they were kindly open their ears to our questions and gave us some good answers and some interesting answers. So they shared some information on the backstory and history of Mojo, as well as what they've been listening to these days. And a big thanks to them again for doing that. And thank you for listening. So without further ado, this is Mojo Magazine. So this is Matt Sullivan from Light in the Attic Records. I'm sitting here at the Mojo Magazine office. Maybe you guys could all introduce yourselves and say what you do at Mojo.
I'm Jenny Bulley. I'm the reviews editor at Mojo. I've been here since about 1908. And I wade through lots of records and digital submissions every month and choose a few to go in the magazine. Sometimes they're the right few, sometimes they're not.
All right. Ian?
Did you plan that? My name's Ian Harrison, and I look after what was still called the news section, even though we're a monthly magazine. So that involves, news and getting an interesting and appealing mix of stuff, like the magazine does itself, but a little bit more like the starter, for the main courses. And then I also do the back section, which is the dessert. Is it the dessert?
Pudding.
The pudding.
Cheese and nuts.
Cheese and nuts, yeah. Maybe a bit of cheesecake, ice cream, fruits, healthy options, some unhealthy options.
All right.
Ian also commissions what I think is the lifeblood of Mojo Magazine, which is the Buried Treasure page, which is, before I worked at Mojo. I'm Danny Eccleston, I'm the senior editor at Mojo, and I've been here since 1910.
Newbie.
Yeah. And so Buried Treasure was always my favourite page in Mojo, and so it's very exciting to be. It's the first thing I read in every issue of Mojo, even now.
It's a mad one, isn't it? Because we were saying, weren't we? The idea. Is there enough buried treasure out there? And of course, there always is, as you well know, Matt.
Yes,
it never ends.
It is endless.
It is amazing, yeah. I'm John Mulvey. I'm Mojo's editor, and I've been here since January, so I'm kind of the new boy.
6 months?
Yeah,
5 months?
5 months, yeah. I think, something like that. And my job is probably mostly playing records to annoy the rest of the staff.
Very skilled at that.
Well said.
Positive annoyance.
So, maybe you guys tell me a little about the history. I know a little bit of it, but of Mojo. How long has it been around? How many issues are you guys at?
297 as of today, I think.
Yeah. What was the first year?
1993.
93, okay.
So, autumn 1993.
Yeah.
First issue was Bowie. Lennon. No, Lennon and
Dylan, yeah.
Which none of us worked on.
No.
Who here is the... Or Jenny, you're the oldest person?
I'm not the oldest.
Jeff
I've been here the longest.
Jeff was the first one, though, wasn't he?
Was Jeff on the first one?
I think Jeff Brown, who's
he might have
outside,
been,
we should get to come in and say hello.
Yeah.
He's been here for the whole thing.
Crazy trip.
that's
more,
it.
Yeah, more or less.
And
Not strange.
what are some of your guys' probably hard after almost 300 issues, but what are some of your favorite issues or most memorable?
297, definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a very good question, isn't it?
It is.
There's been so much great stuff, Matt.
It has.
Yeah.
It's true.
I think maybe not the issues, but I am fondest of like the Mojo Awards that we used to do a long time ago, and the whole kind of rigmarole around that was for people who thought that they were quite cool and used to being in rooms with musicians, suddenly lost it, and when they were en masse.
I always loved the photo.
Yeah,
It's
that's
just
right.
bonkers.
It
With all
was
these like
dead weird,
random weird people in the
Amazing.
room together.
Yeah.
But great. I mean, it was
Yeah.
like really big extremes.
I know. And when you look
Yeah.
at those photos now and you see how many of those people have sadly passed away,
Yeah.
it's kind of like...
That's
The
the
amazing-
thing. So I think I was thinking about this the other day and thinking about who we'd interviewed over the years and that kind of thing, and how we've, out of necessity, really become a kind of journal of record in that respect, and not in a necessarily morbid way, but there is this kind of urgency, I think, to make sure that we talk to everyone while we can, and I think that becomes more kind of pressing and sort of significant to us as a role, to make sure that we get to hear these stories while we still can.
Yeah, I relate to that. We feel the pressure all the time working on a project, and then you can't get it out in time. The person passes away, and it's always the worst. And it's just
For sure.
inevitable how life goes. But the pressure is mounting every day.
Ian's thriving obituary page is a testament to that, aren't they?
I long for a boring obituary page. There was one month when, and this, I mean, it's very strange talking about obituaries at all, because obviously it's somebody's life and it's it's a career and all this stuff. But Bobby Boris Pickett was basically the main name that came up, and good for Bobby Boris Pickett. But it's nice. It was good in a way, because when you have, they had that one when there was Holger Tsukai and Glenn Campbell and Walter Becker.
It's a lot of people.
Let's see,
It all like
after that.
one after
You
the
start
other.
having to make kind of quantitative judgments.
Yeah, you do.
Which is a hideous thing to have to do. It's not a good editorial look.
Especially for an obituary. It's
Yeah.
rough.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah.
Look at my eyes.
Yeah.
Hollowed out they are. But I would say, while we're on the subject, I think they also served, which is for people who may be a bit less sung, and in its own way that does become quite a celebratory thing, where people who maybe they weren't huge stars, but what they did was certainly valid and interesting and good to look back on.
Yeah.
Like
I think celebration is a really important word, I think, Ian.
For the whole magazine.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the people that we talk to are so pleased, generally speaking, I have to say. Having come, worked for other music magazines and then come to Mojo, what immediately surprised me and amazed me was how everyone wanted to talk to us. Everyone wanted to set the record straight. Everyone wanted to get there. And everyone appreciated Mojo's approach. Generally, we're interested in how they made this amazing music and the stories surrounding the music that they made. And just, and they appreciated the fact that that Mojo cared, and they felt like it plugged them into a world of people caring about them and their music. And it even goes like sort of some of our biggest fans as readers are musicians, and I think that goes back to what Jenny was saying about what it used to be like at our award ceremonies, and the people that were really losing their shit about Jesus and Mary Chain being in the room were like people like Elton John, so it was like musicians.
Literally accurate.
That's literally accurate. Like sort of,
Wow.
Elton John gave them a single person standing ovation as Jesus and Mary Chain went to pick that up.
doesn't quite seem real, does it?
crazy.
No,
Yeah.
but it's kind of like
envision that.
there's a world of where I think musicians feel like they get their due, and that they get to celebrate the musicians that inspired them and excite them as well.
Yeah. I would say it's a very positive thing.
Yeah.
It's like it is great. It's great doing it as well, isn't it? Let's be honest. I'm sure it is
It's
in your.
fantastic job.
Yeah.
It's also, I think what Danny says is really accurate, and I think actually having been here for such a short period of time, I kind of think I underestimated that a little bit before I came here, because I've worked in music journalism for 28 years. I've never been at a magazine that has this kind of relationship with its heroes, and that is. It's a huge honour. Do you know what I mean? I know we can be slightly sort of moist and sentimental about these things, and I don't want to sound quite so kind of deferential to it, but it's fantastic, and I think I really didn't quite grasp that. That was the big thing that I didn't quite grasp until I got here, what that relationship is. It's kind of amazing.
You must get the occasional hate mail, which I read sometimes in the letters to the editor, but it's usually pretty slim. But like,
what's that band? What's it? Mackenzie?
Oh yeah.
Oh, what was it?
No, we had a guy write.
Yeah, you should put them out. But really issue them, Matt. I'm going to fetch them.
Sure, please.
Guys.
That guy took great exception, didn't he?
He took great exception to the Marky Smith tribute feature that you wrote, Ian. Didn't
I did.
And but his issue was not with Ian's piece, but the fact that we had spent any amount of space in the magazine for Marky Smith.
Yeah.
And
he said instead we should. Coming up.
Yes.
What other bands? John, what bands did he say we should be covering instead of the Fall?
I'm trying to find the letter, actually. I probably brought the wrong magazine in, haven't I? You should read it, Danny, because you read that letter out loud many times.
That's in my terrible American accent that real Americans would take offence to.
Yeah, exactly.
I would enjoy it.
I genuinely can't find it.
But
anyway, the letters page is.
I'm going to go and find it.
Is a fantastic resource.
I always love reading it.
And it's one.
Oh no, here it is.
Oh, Ian, wait.
Yeah, because I just saw Ian's name in it as an indictment. So. Yeah, McKenna Mendelssohn Mainline. Have you put any of their records?
No.
But there you go. So there's always.
What about Three Man Army?
What about Bull?
No.
What about Bull
Angel?
Bull Angus.
Bull Angus. Is it Bull Angus?
Angel
Yeah, Bull Angel would be amazing. I love Bull Angel. But Bull Angus.
Bull and the Angel.
So these bands all exist. We didn't believe that they actually existed when we play.
The three-man army sounds familiar. Three-man army?
Yeah.
There you go.
They're kind of early 70s kind of blues jamming bands.
Okay.
Not even jamming, were they, really? They're quirky, though. One of them was...
Our readers have strong views that they would like, make sure that we're aware of, and that's fine by us. We love that.
This guy's right, though, isn't he? Because one thing that we do and that makes it great to be on this magazine at the moment, whatever's happening, is that we're sort of coinciding with the zeitgeist now, whereby nothing is consigned to history anymore. Everything's.
Yeah, I don't think we have any trouble with the guilty pleasures idea. I don't know. Do you have that kind of shit in America?
No, it's changed much so. Yeah, I remember when I was younger.
We don't believe any pleasures should be guilty. Not musical ones anyway. Obviously, there's a legal line that we will not cross. But no, the idea that that you need to feel bad about some music you like because it's deemed unfashionable by some kind of taste fascist police or whatever,
and that has always been the way, hasn't it? Because going back to when it first started, I remember seeing the first issue of Mojo, and it was a shock, wasn't it? A glossy magazine about this stuff. Obviously, very exciting, and definitely read it. But it's a very good idea. There's a good quote, isn't there? Have you read that book, the Rock Snob's Handbook?
Stephen Daly.
Yeah, because he had this sort of backhanded compliment to Mojo. I'm trying to remember what it is, but it was exuberance and high production values, but with this sort of, I think he called it the basement dwelling, record fan mentality. But
exuberance about things that prior to 1993 and Mojo, no one had been exuberant about for a good decade or so.
Like family.
I remember the first issue I've read was a friend of mine, Francisco from Munster Records in Spain. He was in Montana, and I was driving around the United States, 1998, and he had the issue with Massive Attack on the cover. That was the first time I'd ever heard of Mojo, and it was really I had just been getting in through Munster, Suicide, New York Dolls, The Spaceman 3, and this whole other world, and it was like a really, I still remember where I was standing in this room. It's so silly, and I still have that issue, but it was just I don't know, I think a lot of Mojo readers and such share a common feeling on that. I mean, it's just what you guys do here is special, and I mean, I think there are There's obviously, as we all agree, lots of great magazines and places out there to learn about music, but it is kind of amazing since 1993 that you guys are still doing it. And one question I had is how much is the world of this journalism and everything changed? I mean, you guys have obviously moved offices a few times. People have, come and gone, but I mean, it seems like, I will say that it seems like, from my outside perspective, that things are still, the magazine I remember in 1998 and the ones now, I mean, it seems like the spirit is still there, and the quality's still there, but from your perspective. Yeah. Did I just answer the damn question? Yeah.
No, we'd be idiots, or I'd certainly be an idiot, and anyone would be an idiot to mess with this magazine too much. I mean, it's like our readers are incredibly loyal, and I think we're very well aware that a lot of them have been reading it for pretty much since the beginning, and so we try and respect that, and we try and make sure that we don't. Although there are certain artists that we're not going to mention that we do every now and again, quite often in the magazine, but we do try and tell new stories and try and find we work extra hard to try and find new things to say about those artists, and I think you got to respect those readers, and the magazine works, and I mean it's basically just about music, loving music and seeing music as a great tradition, and joining the dots between records that came out 50 years ago and records that are coming out next month, and understanding what our readers are going to be into.
It's got to be a battle every. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I agree with John entirely. But that sort of finding a new focus on things. Some of my favourite Mojo features are things where we'll pick, half an hour in 1965 and expand it into 12 pages, and I love that kind of deep focus on those kids that hung out outside Paul McCartney's house or whoever.
How hard is it to decide who's on the cover, and then also how much is that is the influence of that in terms of selling the magazine and paying the bills? Is that as obvious as it seems?
It's pretty obvious.
Yeah. What's the lowest selling Mojo magazine of all time?
Classified.
That's classified. Okay. I could guess. But
Just want to say that there's a rattling noise. That's the art editor hitting a scanner to make it work. Did you hear that?
So that's one thing that's changed since Mojo's been started. Technology has come along to ruin our lives in new and unexpected ways.
It has, hasn't it?
Like poor old the scanner over there that our art editor's hitting.
Also just letters to the editor. I mean, 1990 something. Those were real letters, and now you must get so many
we used to
emails.
get so many faxes, angry faxes. I remember them. Furious faxes for Patti Smith. I remember once.
Oh wow! How many CDs, downloads, records do you guys get sent on a weekly basis?
I couldn't possibly add them up, Jen. What about?
Especially now that they're multi-format, I couldn't really say.
In a previous life, I was a reviews editor at a similar magazine, and about sort of 10 or 15 years ago, and I did a calculation at one point where I reckoned that we were getting about 800 albums a month, 700 or 800 albums a month, because that's what it's kind of when people phone up and say, have you played our record and that kind of thing. Frankly, a lot of the time we have to say no, and that's just because we just get so much music that it's really hard. We always say, find one of our regular writers that you think might be into the music and get them to do it, because we have to rely on our sort of freelancer ears who are more specialists in certain fields to be able to hear everything. We work through music non-stop every day, 5 days a week,
and we don't make a dent in it.
We don't make a dent in it.
And that's an important point, because it's not just us, sitting in this room, or even people outside this room, putting the magazine together as we speak while we are talking to you. It is our freelancers and writers who, we rely on to hip us to things. Really, it feels like a collegiate environment where, and we respect our writers and are excited by the ideas our writers have. So I have worked at other music magazines where the editorial staff is is more dictatorial, defines what's going to happen more, then farms out articles to writers, freelancers. But actually, it's always felt different at Mojo. It's always felt like it's more porous, the relationship between in the office and outside of the office.
How many people's on the staff full time?
Full time is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
But then,
and then
about
there's
7 or 8 others.
eight regulars in the office.
But then the sort of writing cohort is it's about 50, isn't it? Something like that. A lot of whom have been here pretty much since the start, to be honest.
One of my favorite Mojo freelancers is Michael Simmons. Hopefully you're listening, Michael, in
Hello, Michael.
Culver City, California.
Probably
Have you
Do
guys
you get regular
Yeah.
phone calls from Michael?
Sometimes I really love him. We have office parties occasionally at the Los Angeles Lightning Act office, and he'll come, and he's awesome. He's a character. He wrote liner notes for our. We did this collection in 2010 of Chris Christopherson's publishing demos, and he wrote the notes, and they're so good. Some of my favorite notes we've ever been a part of. I mean, usually with notes, I'm not always a fan when people kind of put themselves into the notes, but he really was a character within those notes and deserved to be in those notes. They're just kind of more about him trying to sneak in to see Christopherson and somewhere in New York City, like early, like first album, and he gets in, and kind of him and his friend, it kind of changed their lives, and it's also he interviewed Chris and stuff. But I love that type of writing. It's just real personal, and he's just he's done a lot of covers, right? Mojo.
Yeah.
Dylan stories, especially.
Clapton, Dylan. He's also, who else is it? One of my favourite ever Mojo pieces he did with he did a Fugs feature, which was really fantastic, actually. And he did a brilliant Dylan piece on Dylan around New Morning, and it was kind of about Dylan moving back to New York, and kind of like it was kind of like a weird, kind of strange phase that you'd say nothing very much happened in, but he got great interviews out of David Crosby and other people that were hanging out with Dylan at that time, and you just felt like it was a new perspective on the guy. So Michael's good at that. Michael was on National Lampoon magazine. So he's a proper, old school underground type. So that means that he can talk to people like the Fugs. He can see through me as the man instantly.
Michael's not the man. He's
No way.
Real deal.
No way, man.
Do you get? What are some? If they're still out there, which I imagine they are, subjects that you guys would still love to write about in large feature form, or people you'd like to put on the cover if it wasn't about having to sell an issue
as well.
we put people on the cover who we really wanted to be on the cover. There's no compromise at all. But
it's not like we don't like the cover stuff.
No, of course.
The feature that I've always wanted to commission and have never quite got close enough to yet is Jonathan Richman. It's like that's my holy grail is the Jonathan Richman career retrospective interview. That's
he doesn't do interviews.
No.
Writes
advice columns.
Which is great. He wrote me a poem once. Which was and it was about Mojo, I think.
Are you going to read it to us?
I haven't got it with
You've
me.
memorised it.
Great.
So he's, I've been really close to commissioning the Jonathan Richman profile piece where we talk to everybody who's ever worked with him. I'll probably do that at some stage, but I'm still slightly holding out for Jonathan Richman to crack a weekend.
It feels attainable, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Kind of. It's like, I quite like a Bob Dylan interview controversy. That doesn't really feel attainable.
That's a good
idea. It's like I didn't come in promising that to publishers.
What about any other or current favorites you guys have been listening to? Anything from 2018 reissue-wise or contemporary releases that you guys have enjoyed?
He's made a list. That's Danny first, because he's brought a list.
Oh, yeah, good.
Well, what have we been digging in the office all the time? I mean, I'm loving the OC's record, Smoke Reverser, which just feels like the best OC's record yet.
It's the best one since Floating Coffee. I think. But it's also... when's this going to go out, Matt?
That's a very good question.
Okay.
Sometimes we sit on podcasts for years, and
Okay.
sometimes they come out, hopefully, in the coming months.
Yeah, okay. Well, maybe if you're a Mojo subscriber already, you might get the OC's FlexiDisc. If you 298, then
That's cool.
it's just subscribers only, but it's really nice they did it.
You guys done a FlexiDisc before?
No, we haven't.
Yeah, wow.
Really
That's great.
cool. FlexiDisc appear to be much better than I remember them.
It sounds really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've done a few, yeah. Sometimes they're just, I mean, it's just a novelty for them. They're just so great, so.
Yeah,
OCs
it's a
will
beautiful
sound good
looking
on.
thing, but
Yeah.
it actually plays alright. It's like really bassy, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
bizarre.
OCs will sound great on a Flexi,
Yeah.
I would think.
Exactly.
It's just like made for a
So that's
Flexi.
good.
You know, they epitomise, I think, that what John said earlier about joining the dots between great old music and great new music. It's like there's just no doubt about it. They're a band for music heads, and you know, and as far as we're concerned, they're the kind of band that our readers, if they knew about, they would really dig. So it's one of our responsibilities is bringing bands like that to our readers.
Yeah, they're a pretty hard band to interview as well. Actually, he doesn't do many interviews, Dwight.
No.
But they're good. They're good in that aspect as well because they're in a great tradition where they kind of move the story on as well. It's like you listen to their records and you think, well, there's obviously a bunch of nuggetsy stuff and can going on and that kind of thing. But it's not a direct facsimile. Do you know what I mean? It feels like it's a logical sort of development of it.
And it's so fiery and exciting, and that's kind of there's always room for fiery and exciting, isn't there?
Yeah, but virtuosic as well. If that's what is that a word?
Yeah, that's a word.
Yeah, it's the word. How to pronounce it. Anyway, yeah, it's good. I really like this band called Garcia Peoples that I found a couple of months ago. You heard them? They're from
What's it called? Garcia people?
Garcia Peoples. Yeah.
Guess, just guess.
Okay.
they're from I think they're New Jersey actually, but they're kind of really young. But they're sort of a jamming band, but a kind of a good jamming band, not a kind of fish-like jamming band and that sort of thing. Because I'm a massive Grateful Dead fan, as everyone will complain about endlessly.
I love
really
Dead.
amazingly self-controlled in not doing what I used to do and just playing Grateful Dead concerts every Friday afternoon in the kind of sort of very brutalising way to my work mates.
You respect your new co-workers.
Yeah.
I
I'm
love
trying
the Dead.
to. It's hard work, Matt, but I'm giving it a go.
There's definitely a divide of light in the attic of people that like fish and don't like fish.
Yeah.
And the don't likers are the majority. But
yeah, well, do you know what? I really tried
that's-
with I really tried with Fish because some people tried to. I went to see the Fare Thee Well concert. Where Trey Anastasio was. Trey Anastasio, your favourite, and so I really sort of dug deep into Fish to try and find those moments, and occasionally between like the sort of the 11th and the 14th minute, I find a really amazing passage, and then the rest of it. And I kind of like worked out in the end that he was ultimately a lot more he seemed to be a lot more influenced by kind of Zappa rather than Jerry Garcia and a lot of what that music is kind of wacky. And I sort of struggle with that.
I just never been able to figure them out. I mean, I don't. The Dead seems to me has so much more of like kind of soul to it, not like R&B soul, but just there's more kind of spirit.
Definitely,
and the noodling
of
of Fish just gives me a headache. But
anyway, so this
I'm sorry, Fish fan. That's a random
no. It's kind of it's such a. This whole world is such a closed world to the UK, I should say as well, because it's like none of these bands like Fish and kind of Mo and Disco Biscuits and all these people, none of them ever come down here. See, Jenny doesn't even believe they exist now. I'm just making a note.
They exist. They exist.
Yeah, they're really big as well.
Yes, huge bands.
But anyway, this band, Garcia Peoples, are not huge. They're tiny and they're very young, and they're playing kind of like sort of early 70s style Dead jams, but in a very economic way. Most of the songs are only about 4 minutes long on the album. There is a suite, but it kind of belts along quite aggressively. Great, and I think there's kind of a little scene kind of emerging on the East Coast, as far as I can tell. Them and a band called Wet Tuna, who I really like. It's Matt Valentine, who used to be from MPNE and Tower Records and that kind of thing. So that's really cool as well. And another one that Wood and One does called 111 Heavy, which I really like as well. So
Are they related, Garcia Peoples? They look like two youngsters
there's two
and
brothers.
somebody's
There's
uncle.
two brothers, yeah.
Right.
There's two brothers in the band. So that's what I'm into.
Any other ones? Jenny and Ian?
I've become mildly obsessed with Amyl and the Sniffers, basically, who are an Australian sort of their favourite group, they said they like AC/DC and Rose Tattoo.
Wow.
It's basically Australian hooligan music.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very basic, very entertaining, doesn't require a great deal of, contemplation. Great fun live.
And yet not-
Mullets,
yeah.
they have mullets.
Wow.
And they have this amazing girl singer.
Yeah, she's proper. So I really like them. It's got a lot of Australian groups in about a week. There was Lagoon Sax as well. I like them. That's Robert Forster from the Go-Betweens.
Oh,
son.
okay.
And they are,
That record's really nice.
but they are very, you look at them and it is like kind of looking at the Go-Betweens in about
it's quite spooky.
1979, perhaps in a spooky way. And
They're not like Rose Tattoo.
they're not like Rose Tattoo,
no,
but
no.
you see, it's the whole come up from Rose Tattoo to the Go-Betweens. That's great.
And we love Rolling Blackouts, Coastal
Coastal
Fever.
They were there, yeah.
Do you know what? That record's probably been played more than any other in the office
absolutely.
this year, actually, that Hope Downs.
That's Sub Pop, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
It
yeah,
came out
yeah.
last week, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a
Friday,
fantastic record.
I need to hear that. I keep
Yeah.
hearing
It's
it.
kind of like
That's
the
all
Feelies
Friday
as well. It
afternoon.
really belts along. It's kind of, you know how a lot of those bands that kind of derive from those kind of jangly indie bands
Yep.
sometimes can be quite fragile and sort of dislocated. They're not like
Not
that.
at all, no.
It's
No.
really heads down, and they're really sort of...
Yeah, much
Yeah, it's very high
intestinal
energy, isn't it?
fortitude. Total. And it's funny because watching them live, there are these sort of quite trancey, sort of jam-like songs, but they're very melodious as well. But they're short as well, which I appreciated. There wasn't any time to get bored.
No, it's true.
I never get
That's
bored, you
important.
see. I always want the songs to go on 10 minutes long. It's like-
Do you have a favorite?
I do. I'm waving a CD at Matt Sullivan now. 'Cause
Oh,
This
okay.
is apart from Rolling Blackouts, I've been playing this to death this year.
What is
which
this?
it's
Looks
a guy
cool.
called Camille Keeler, who is from Sudan, and this was dug up by one of those German crate digging labels called Habibi Funk.
Yeah, I know that label, yeah.
But this is amazing
Great
because
stuff.
some of it's in English, some of it's in Arabic, and they, obviously found some dusty tapes or whatever in Khartoum, and then they found Camille, and he had these 2 radio sessions that he'd recorded, and he managed to keep the tapes for, which is quite unusual apparently in Sudan at that period. So and it's very sort of kind of hard funk with sort of talky political lyrics. It's really good because it's really groovy as well as
Yeah,
quite
it's
Arabic
pretty
sounding.
close to a lot of the Ethiopic stuff,
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
the Mahmoud
It's very
Ahmed
good
or
sounding.
Alamayu,
Looks great.
and that kind of thing. I mean, it makes you wonder whether there's like this great trove of Sudanese music from that period,
Yeah, I
in
think
the
it's a lot
same
of
way that they
Sudanese
managed
jazz.
to sort of unearth all that Ethiopian music, whether there's a possibility in Sudan. I mean, it's what we were saying right at the start, isn't it? About there's always new stuff to discover.
Of course,
and it's
yeah.
like who
Yeah.
knew that there was this crazy
Yep.
funk
Yeah.
from Sudan in the early 70s?
Well, that's the amazing thing about this is when it does sound 70s, like
Yeah.
unbelievably authentically 70s. But they found a little note in the tapes of these sessions. It's from 1992.
Oh,
No
really?
way.
Yeah.
Wow.
Good Lord. Oh, my God, no, I
Is
did
the
that.
cover 1992?
No,
I was
absolutely
like,
not.
can't get.
I mean, he's
like,
had
wow.
a long career
Yeah.
in Sudan, I think. But there's some they're not. Recorded music wasn't allowed to be played on the radio in Sudan, so everybody had to go in and do sessions for radio stations, and then they weren't allowed to take the tapes with them in case they were
Wow,
released.
that's amazing. That's
But
like
he
the old
managed
top of
to
the pops
steal
thing,
it.
isn't it?
Absolutely,
Where
yeah,
it's
isn't it? Yeah.
The Union won't let
Yeah.
them.
There's a really good comp from a year ago. I can't think of the label of music from Somalia. Did you guys see this? I wish I could remember the damn
One of
name.
those.
It was phenomenal. It was a
Is that
similar.
Analog Africa or Soundwave?
No, I love those
Sounds
labels, but
from
not those
Africa.
two. It was someone
Okay.
else. A newer label. I think it was nominated for a Grammy for historical, and it's just amazing. And it's a similar thing where I think the bands weren't supposed to, I guess, keep the music, or so the radio is kind of the only way people could hear it. And then I want to say, buried all the tapes. And after
Wow.
the big Somali revolution of I believe the last 15 years, they dug up all the tapes like below the radio station. This
Wow.
guy found the tapes and. I'm pretty sure you guys have reviewed the record, but really great. But yeah, it's just an endless treasure trove. People always ask us about Light in the Attic is eventually things will run out to reissue, or it's like it's just crazy. I mean, just today, how many bands you're never going to be able to hear all the bands of 2018?
Yeah, but there's
it's
always
endless.
records.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always things that I find that have never been reissued.
Of course,
It's mind-blowing, and I know that. I suspect that there's a bunch of them that you probably have tried to kind of put out, but there's various kind of issues beyond like actual desire to do it that kind of militates against it. But it's kind of like it's amazing.
It's also styles and interests. Like some things we'd reissue now, maybe 10 years ago, or 16 years ago when Lightning X started, we may not have enjoyed. Like, your tastes are changing and evolving.
I was thinking about this, actually.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this morning before you came in, and I was thinking about what was the first Light in the Attic records that I heard, and it was like Jackie Me Too.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Wishbone.
And it's kind of like thinking, maybe this is like a reggae label. But what do you think that you've put out in the last year or two that you wouldn't have expected Light in the Attic to do?
Last year or two? Well, I mean, the maybe more than a year or two, but like the Donnie and Joe Emerson record, or something like that, or like, probably when I'm 42 now, when I was 25, I would have been like, what the hell is this? Like, just taste change, and you find different music. Also, some of the, compilations we've done, like we were talking earlier about Eye in the Center and Microcosm, and some of the more,
Eye in the Center especially.
Thank you. Some of the more, ambient new age compilations. I mean, I loved Eno records and had those as, when I was getting into records in the mid 90s, but it just, I didn't understand the context, and sometimes you need kind of an older brother or someone at a record store or Mojo or someone to kind of give you a little help.
It's also what we were talking before we switched on about the destigmatization of new age music a little bit, and people are still kind of wary about it.
Of course,
but it has what was that used to call
the woo woo?
The woo woo.
Yeah.
But it's kind of it's so much more satisfying than that. It doesn't just work in kind of sort of an incense shop.
Well, that's we're a case in point with that, aren't we? Because I'm the only person in this office with any real feel for the woo-woo, whereas we all enjoy...
hang on.
That's true. No, John's got some breathing techniques.
I don't even know what the woo-woo is.
A big C, that's how...
Yeah, Hamill and Sniffers.
No, less of the
woo. Not on that astral plane.
Exactly. No, you're quite cosmic. You're very cosmic.
I embrace higher and lower selves.
Exactly. Yeah.
Simultaneously.
Ian's all about the vibration.
I am. Tell me, Mal, is there a record that you've been desperate to release that you couldn't?
Tons.
Go on, give us the ultimate one.
I can't. I'll tell you off the tape.
Okay.
Because I'm still trying to record
it out. So
I think it'd be too obvious to start talking about it. There's a lot that we. Just so much of the headaches are licensing problems.
Yeah.
Or sometimes eccentric artists who don't want to dig this stuff up or be involved. But I feel like my favorite ones are definitely, I guess I was about to say licensing issues, but I can think of some now that are the other. But
who's your new Lewis? Come on.
There's some out there, but there's always. It's amazing how again, just kind of coming back to just as the well of it all, it's endless. But I always go back to the same kind of like 2 or 3 for about 10, 15 years. I'm just like trying to chip away at to try to convince someone to say yes. But what are your guys' dream reissues that you think should come out? Do you have any yourselves?
But isn't this the good thing about your label? I mean, you bring stuff out that I'm not expecting it.
Yeah, I was thinking Gimme Eccleston, that record.
Yeah,
fantastic record.
Oh, thank you.
But I'd never heard of that.
Yeah,
I mean, it had never come out. In the
I had never had till Patrick McCarthy works at Light in the Attic. He was the one that turned me on to it. He produces a lot of the reissues and project manager for the label, and I had no clue on it. And then I liked Big Star, and you hear those elements like Chris Bell and
massively.
Yeah,
I mean, do you have a kind of network of crate diggers that are hipping into stuff as well?
Yeah. I mean, it's without those folks we wouldn't exist. So like Douglas McGowan who put together Eye in the Center, or Zach Cowie who did like the country funk comps and introduced us to Michael Chapman's music. And there's always this guy's DJ Supreme in Seattle who turned us on to the old Seattle soul scene in the 60s and 70s. I grew up in the suburbs of Seattle, had no idea that music existed. So without those folks, it's just endless of not endless. Without those people, like you guys as freelancers, you mentioned,
it's a group brain.
It's a totally group brain.
Yeah. It's funny that, I was going to say, obviously, when we interview people, obviously sometimes you want them to tell you things, and there are certain subtle techniques you can employ to make that happen.
Yeah.
How do you make an awkward artist? How do you Jedi mind trick them? And how do you get them to come down from the tree as if they are a cat?
I mean, wow, that's well said. For me, it's just. Most of the things we're reissuing were financial failures originally, so they didn't take off. So the people probably had a horrible experience in the music business. Mm-hmm. So for us, it's just kind of letting them know that we're honest and have good good goals here. We're not like out to exploit them or their story or whatever it might be. So it just takes time. It's really just patience and persistence, and like it, so I'm not a person who wins anyone over in the first 2 seconds. So it's like,
So
and
what's
a lot.
the first thing you do? Do you send them flowers? Or do you turn up
No,
on the doorstep?
but usually send them like a box of records or our
Yeah.
CDs, or like with a letter, and just kind of explain kind of what we do. And then at that point, it kind of moves on forward from there. But yeah, I mean, some of my favorite ones we've done just take, like Rodriguez, or I mean, some of them just take years, and it's like, you get, I think after you get deeper into it, I understand why, which is, again, bad, dealing with bad managers or bad record labels rip them off, or just eccentric people. But Donnie and Joe Emerson's a good example. I think they first thought we were kind of like, in the world kind of thought we were making fun of them, with this silly album cover and this kind of thing, and then they kind of realized like, no, these guys have good intentions. I mean, one thing like Kevin Cipriano Howes, who put together a lot of Light in the Attic reissues and wrote a lot of liner notes, he put together a series called Native North America, Volume 1, which is one of my favorite
really
things we've done.
Yeah.
And for him, I mean, that was, he's really the glue that honestly put that together over like a 10-year plus period. And for him, I mean, it was, Native peoples in the world, but especially in the United States and Canada, have been so mistreated in every way. So, that was a whole other battle of just gaining people's trust. And, those people were very hesitant to want to work with people outside of their community, and especially in the music business. So it's always, I feel like every project's always different. It always seems like it's not, you kind of think it's going to go this way, and it never does, which, makes it interesting. But yeah.
But it's what makes, a new record on Light in the Attic exciting and often revelatory, is that thing where it's music that hasn't been squished and mediated by whatever was the kind of the fashionable, sonic orthodoxy of the time. They had this terrible experience because people weren't expecting it. They didn't have a context for it. That troubled people. I think now we embrace the fact that there's no context for it, or it's unusual. You're kind of looking for things that make you go, that's like nothing I've ever heard before. Like Lewis or Don and Joe, loads of those things just make you go.
I mean, that whole Lewis thing was great, wasn't it?
Amazing.
I mean,
It was an adventure. It was strange. I mean, again, one had no idea where that was going, but I mean, that's the hope, is just finding something that, I guess, sometimes giving it context. That it might be new age music through Douglas McGowan, or those things that could make you look at it in a whole other light. Like, when Kevin Howes suggested this compilation of native, musicians and First Nations musicians doing folk rock and country music, in my mind, I'm thinking maybe Link Ray or someone like that, but then, lesser known stuff is hard to even kind of envision, and then you hear it and it kind of knocks you out, and it makes you look at the world and things totally differently. So,
you're saying that about gaining the trust of people, and we talked about this earlier on. People do like Mojo, musicians like it, and I think there's probably common values there, isn't there?
I think so. Yeah,
you like the Asgasm that we have. Yeah, you want to. Make something good. With a world full of trash.
Yes, that's I always say
quality with proper intent behind it.
Do it nicely as well. Yeah. Do it justice. Do it on it.
That's always the goal for us.
Make it something that people, it's that tactile experience as well, which we still cling to, and we're still kind of. I hate using the word passionate because it always makes me sound like I'm in a job interview. That people can be genuinely passionate about them. And I think that's do these things. These things have languished in obscurity for so long. The best thing you can do is to frame them in a new way, which gives them that respect that they've always deserved. I think.
Yeah, my feeling is, even if it doesn't sell great, like the Gimmer Eccleston record did, but it was at least done, and I feel like it was done proper. And obviously some of your issues must sell better than others, but at least you're documenting these people while they exist, you're interviewing them, you're doing these things, and I think the world is a better place for these things. That's my at least biased opinion. But
can we just talk a bit more about Lewis, because I'm kind of intrigued about
the story's so good. Go on.
But it's also like, do you feel after what happened with the Lewis record and the whole story of Lewis Records, whether there's some kind of weird pressure on you now as a label to kind of find more kind of breakout weirdness like that?
Yes and no. I mean, I think like Donnie and Joe had, you know, some of those elements.
But it didn't
like,
quite have the
no, of course not.
I
guess
I'm not talking. So
yeah.
I guess I'm talking about sort of commercial expediencies in a weird way, rather than artistic ones. Lewis kind of, I assume unexpectedly, kind of upped the game in this strange way for you.
I think so a bit. I mean, the Rodriguez and like Searching for Sugar Man was definitely for us, that's our biggest seller. Yeah. So,
but it's a different kind of record. Though,
different kind of record, more mainstream.
You can get how that
took
off in it.
But the Lewis one, I mean, we are constantly looking for things, but I try not to go down that rabbit hole of like, you know, it has to be this. I mean, for us, like people often think, and I get why, that we need to have this story or this narrative or something to be able to want to reissue this record. And for us, like, we reissue records a lot that don't have some crazy narrative. Like the Zyder Z record we just did, I love that record. I don't think there's if there was a Lewis type tale, you know, then people would be a lot more excited about it. But what often we get excited about, you know, a record and dig into it, such Jim Sullivan or Lewis with these records, and you kind of you're documenting a story that maybe hadn't been told or a record that hadn't been released, and so therefore you're kind of hearing this story for the first time. And it's like it's almost the story becomes secondary, but then it becomes in the end, like, to get people interested in it, becomes the first thing. But it is something I try not to go down that desperate rabbit hole, because I think a lot of reissues out there are tons of great ones, but I think there are ones out there that are more of this kind of exploitive story thing and the drama of it than the other,
which is just the same as the way we work. The music's got to be good first,
of course,
and foremost. Ideally, ideally the stories are going to be great as well, but we're not going to feature terrible records just because of the yarn around it. There's always got to be a sort of a motherload of goodness about
I'm the same way.
Sounds.
I want people to hopefully look back on, you know, what we do in 30 years or 40 years or whatever, and have faith that something good was put into the world, and it wasn't just some lame exploitive thing. But the Lewis thing is just the weirdest tale that you've ever told. So
is there any
more records to go?
Not that I've found yet, but I wouldn't be surprised. When we met him, we kept asking him, did you do more records? And he kept saying, oh, lots of records, produced lots of people in Europe and everywhere. And it's like, well, what were they called? And he would not answer. They were called lots of things. And I literally had the L'Amour cover, and I was like, were they called Lewis? Like, pointing to the cover. And he couldn't answer questions. So I think there are things out there. But it's, you know, if he's not on the album cover and he doesn't go by a few pseudonames we know, then that's probably it. But
did you ever feel that you were being hoaxed on that?
Yeah, a lot of times, The first email we got from his, I think it was his nephew, which was the first family member we spoke to. Like, it was just too good to be true. I was like, you know, we need to frame this, and we're getting told this guy's totally made this up. And eventually talking to him more and realizing, and Lewis eventually, that, you know, the nephew really did exist, and that was a true story. But just there was definitely times it seemed like it was all just made up. Thanks you guys so much for talking. This is fun to come here and, you know, keep up the great work. What you guys do is really important, and it means a lot to many of us out there.
Likewise.
Well, thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you for listening to Lightning Attic Podcast. Till next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Some taking line goes to the sea. Needing highways, highway. I'm gonna sit around here where I am, and it's easier to stay here. Think I know my way.